They thought the old woman was harmless. That was their first mistake. In the bustling market of Outpost Jarek 7, where the air reeked of fried algae and engine coolant, Mara Elgin sat on her wooden stool, knitting scarves from insulation fibers scavenged off broken cargo hulls. The younger humans called her Grandma Mara, though most did not mean it kindly. She was the one left behind when miners went to work, when smugglers vanished into the stars, when soldiers died for causes no one remembered. She had the limp of someone broken by wars past, and the stillness of someone long dismissed. But Mara had eyes, and she was watching. The Zerath Dominion arrived just after the midday bells, insectoid titans swarming down the plaza in a scuttle of armored limbs. Their mandibles clicked as they proclaimed in guttural common, "The Dominion demands tribute. Fuel, Oregon, and specimens." The word hung heavy. Specimens. Everyone knew what it meant. Humans for their games, their experiments, their entertainment. One clawed finger extended. It pointed at Mara, this frail one. She will amuse our hatchlings. The crowd gasped. Some whispered pity. Others looked away. Relief painted shameless on their faces. Better her than me. Better the useless old woman. Mara's wrinkled lips curved into a crooked smile. "Dearie," she rasped, "you're going to regret that." They laughed, of course. To them, she was nothing. That night, in the cramped human quarter, whispers multiplied faster than cockroaches. "The old woman's been taken. Shame, but maybe for the best. She's got no kin." Always muttering about badgers. Strange one, that. The gossip rang through thin metal walls. Mara heard every word, and though her hands trembled from age, she did not weep. She had wasted enough tears in her younger years, when Earth mocked her ambitions, when her children turned cold, when her husband's grave was all she had left to sit beside. Now she prepared. The Dominion guards came for her at dawn. They expected fear. Instead, they found her muttering strange syllables. One leaned closer, curious. "What is this honey badger?" it hissed. Mara chuckled. "Something you'll learn the hard way." The insectoid rattled its mandibles, not understanding. But somewhere, in some dusty corner of the Dominion's archives, the phrase would later be searched. A holoscreen would flicker alive, revealing a small earth mammal tearing into lions and cobras with unholy ferocity. And a scholar would whisper, horrified, "Impossible." On the transport ship, Mara was shackled among others. Young miners still reeking of dust, a cook with calloused hands, even a boy no older than 10 whose wide eyes shook with every tremor of the vessel. Their faces carried despair like a second skin. "We're done for," muttered a miner. "Humans don't fight back. We're too weak." Mara coughed, her chest rattling. Then she leaned forward, her eyes bright as burning coals. "Do you know what they used to say about us on Earth?" The boy sniffed. "What?" "They thought Florida Man was an isolated case," Mara said, grinning. He was not. Confusion flickered, but with it came the first fragile spark of laughter. And in that laugh, despair cracked. Each night, she spoke to them in whispers. She told tales of duct tape, the miracle adhesive holding Earth together. She told of microwave burritos, cheap fuel for revolutions of stomach and spirit. She described cats, those small tyrants worshipped by humans as overlords. And once, she mentioned a warrior named Chuck Norris, and though none present knew the reference, her wink made them laugh until they nearly forgot the chains biting their wrists. The boy clutched her sleeve one night. "Grandma Mara, are we going to die?" She stroked his hair with fingers worn and steady. "Not today, child." And always she ended with the same words, whispered like an incantation. "When the moment comes, honey badger." When they arrived at the Colosseum, the truth of their fate unfurled. Before them rose walls of alien stone, an arena ringed with shrieking Zerath nobles, their mandibles clashing in anticipation. The sky above was sapphire, cruelly beautiful. The humans were shoved onto sand that reeked of blood. At their feet clattered scraps of weapons, broken pipes, rusted knives, junk intended as mockery. The gates groaned open. From the shadows emerged beasts bred for slaughter, scaled serpents with too many eyes, fanged reptiles towering on muscular limbs, creatures stitched together by Dominion cruelty. The crowd roared. The boy whimpered. The miners cursed. Even the cook fell silent. Mara shuffled forward, frail, unremarkable. She raised one hand, as though commanding legions unseen. Her lips parted. Honey badger. The words fell like a spark in a dry tinder. Something ignited. The miners surged with sudden fury, their despair transmuted into violence. One rammed his pipe into a beast's armored plates with the strength of desperation. Another hurled sand into alien eyes, laughing madly as claws swiped blind. The cook tackled a serpent, stabbing with a rusted knife again and again while shouting, "This is for duct tape, you bastard!" Even the boy found courage, darting between beasts, shouting insults, distracting them long enough for others to strike. And at the center stood Mara, her voice clear as a trumpet. Left flank, trip its legs. Humans invented slapstick. Make it proud. The Zayrath and their gilded boos shifted uneasily. One hissed, "They're not fighting to survive. They're fighting to humiliate us." And indeed, comedy bled into carnage. A reptile slipped in its own blood like a cartoon pratfall. A miner body slammed a stunned foe while shouting. For Florida man, no alien understood the phrase, but the dread was palpable. Then the chimera beast emerged, towering above all, stitched with claws and fangs and hatred. The humans froze. Their fire guttered under its shadow. Mara stepped forward. She tapped her cane once, twice, the sound echoing like prophecy. "Do you know why the honey badger is feared?" she called. Her voice carried over the sand, through the silence. Not because it is strongest, not because it is fastest, but because it does not care. The chimera lunged. Mara ducked with impossible speed, her limp vanishing as if it had been theater all along. Her cane struck the beast's jaw with lethal precision. It reeled, howling. The crowd gasped. The humans roared, and the arena fell into chaos, not of Dominion design, but of human will. What happened after is told in fragments. The miners hooped with reckless laughter. The cook shouted recipes as battle cries. The boy danced like flame itself, and everywhere Mara's voice commanded, mocked, inspired. The Zayrath scrambled to lock gates, but humans stormed through, unstoppable. They thought the old woman helpless. That was their final mistake. And now, reader, I ask you to remember this truth. The world will always measure you by frailty, by age, by scars. They will whisper that you are finished, that your best is gone, that you are helpless. But sometimes the smallest voice, spoken at the right moment, can remind us all, strength is not the absence of weakness, but the refusal to bow before it. The Colosseum was supposed to echo with human screams. Instead, it echoed with human laughter. The Zayrath Dominion had miscalculated. What began as a spectacle of humiliation had spiraled into mockery. Beasts lay dead or crippled in the sand, and humans, frail, ridiculous, underestimated, stood unbroken. The nobles in their jeweled balconies twitched mandibles in disbelief. How could a species so soft, so primitive, reduce their blood sport in a slapstick chaos? At the center stood Mara Elgin, cane planted in the dirt, face lit by the fire of rebellion. Around her, miners still clutched broken pipes like swords. The cook's apron was torn, but his grin feral, and the boy clung to her sleeve with trembling pride. The humans had turned the Dominion's theater into their own. Yet victory was fragile. For every beast they had downed, more waited behind barred gates. For every laugh, there lurked the shadow of retaliation. Mara knew this. She saw the guards massing near the exits, saw the nervous flickers of energy rifles. The insects had let the game go too far. They would not tolerate further embarrassment. "Stay sharp," she muttered, low enough for only those near her to hear. "They're about to change the rules." And change them they did. With a thunderous clang, the Colosseum gates opened once more. Out lumbered a monstrosity that dwarfed the others, plated in chitinous armor, its maw dripping acid. Its handler cracked a whip of electricity, and the beast shrieked, a sound like tearing metal. The nobles cheered again, desperate to reclaim control of the spectacle. The boy whimpered, his grip tightening on Mara's hand. "We can't fight that." Mara bent down, her breath warm in his ear. "Child, we already have. The trick is remembering it." The miners exchanged uneasy glances. Their makeshift weapons seemed like toys before such a horror. Even the cook's jokes faltered, but Mara stepped forward, cane tapping steadily, her eyes fixed on the beast. "Do you know what makes us dangerous?" she called out, her voice carrying across the sand. "Not our weapons, not our strength, our absurdity." The beast charged. The humans scattered, but not in panic. Mara's voice cut through chaos, issuing commands sharp as a general's. "Blind its left eye, trip its legs. Don't fight fair, fight human." A miner slid beneath its belly, jamming a pipe into a seam of exposed flesh. Another hurled rocks with reckless precision, drawing its gaze. The cook, mad with adrenaline, screamed, "By the power of microwave burritos!" and leapt onto its back, stabbing wildly. The boy, trembling yet determined, darted forward and hurled a scrap of chain at its feet. The beast stumbled, crashing into the sand. The arena shook with the impact. And then, with all the weight of years and pain behind her, Mara raised her cane high and drove it down into the beast's exposed eye. It howled, flailing, before collapsing in a shuddering heap. For one heartbeat, silence reigned. Then the humans erupted into laughter, cheers, even tears. The impossible had been done. The nobles hissed and screeched, their mandibles clashing in fury. The game was ruined. But Mara knew the battle was only beginning. The Dominion guards surged into the arena, weapons ready, their posture no longer theatrical, but lethal. The crowd sensed it too. The performance had ended, and now came extermination. Mara turned to her companions. "Listen to me. We're not surviving this by strength. We're surviving this by wit. Remember, Honey Badger." The cook barked a laugh, though his eyes were wide. "Grandma, if you say duct tape is the plan, I swear." "No duct tape," Mara interrupted, her smile faint. "Only audacity." The guards advanced. Humans braced themselves. And then, with a roar that startled even the insectoid warriors, the audience erupted, not in anger, but in exhilaration. Against the Dominion's will, the spectacle had enthralled them. Laughter, cheers, jeers, it crashed down like a tidal wave. Even aliens who despised humans were drunk on the madness of what they had seen. The guards hesitated. To kill the humans now would risk turning the mob against them. The Zayrath prized control above all, and control was slipping. Mara seized the moment. She lifted her cane, gesturing toward the balconies. "You see us?" she shouted, her voice raw but unbroken. "We are the frail ones, the laughable ones, the ones you thought helpless. And yet we endure. You can chain us, mock us, starve us, but you will never silence us." The crowd roared louder. Even species long cowed by Dominion rule murmured uneasily, seeds of rebellion taking root. The guards looked to their commanders, unsure. The commanders hesitated, wary of igniting open riot. And so, for the first time in centuries, the humans left the arena not as prisoners, but as victors. They were herded back to holding cells, but their heads were high, their laughter still echoing. Mara settled onto the cold stone floor, exhaustion pressing heavy upon her. The boy curled against her side, whispering, "You saved us." Mara's gaze softened. "No, child. We saved each other. That's what it means to be human." But in her heart, she knew the Dominion would not let this stand. Humiliation demanded vengeance. Tomorrow, or the next day, they would be forced into something worse. And yet something had shifted. A whisper had passed through the galaxy tonight. Humans were not harmless. They were unpredictable. They were dangerous in ways no algorithm could chart. Jonas Vale, one of the miners, sat across from her, his face shadowed by thought. He was a man hardened by loss, his eyes carrying the quiet grief of someone who had buried too many. Yet now those same eyes rested on Mara with something like respect. "You planned this," he said softly. "The laughter, the chaos, wasn't chance. Mara's smile was tired but sly. Child, I've lived long enough to know one truth. When all else fails, make a fool of the enemy. Dignity is overrated. Survival is not. Jonas chuckled, the sound rusty but real. He leaned back against the wall, regarding her with new weight. Not as a relic, but as a leader. Around them, humans whispered stories of what they had done, embellishing already. The cook insisted he had slain 3 beasts single-handed. The boy mimicked Mara's cane strike with wild gestures. Laughter spilled in the dark, as precious as food. And for the first time in years, Mara felt the warmth of kinship. She had been scorned, ignored, reduced to gossip's punchline. Yet here, in the shadow of chains, she had become something unexpected. Hope. Hope is a fragile thing, reader, yet it multiplies faster than despair. Once planted, it spreads like fire through dry grass, leaping walls, crossing galaxies. Perhaps you have felt it, too. That moment when the world insists you are powerless, and still, against all odds, you rise. Remember then what the old woman whispered, not to frighten beasts, but to awaken her people. Strength does not lie in what others see, but in what you choose to unleash when the moment comes. They came for them at dawn, as Mara had known they would. The Zerath Dominion did not forgive humiliation. The previous night's spectacle had been a wound to their pride, and pride was their lifeblood. Now the old woman and her ragged band of survivors were marched from their holding cell into the open, where the cold air carried the stench of oil and ozone. Guards bristled with rifles, and above them the Colosseum's balconies swarmed with nobles and soldiers alike. This was no longer sport. It was judgment. Mara walked with her cane, shoulders stooped. Her limp returned as though it had never vanished. She let them believe the frailty. It was safer that way. Beside her shuffled Jonas Vale, the miner whose silence weighed heavier than steel, and the boy whose wide eyes tried so hard to be brave. The cook muttered under his breath some joke about breakfast burritos, but his hands shook. At the arena's center stood a dais of black stone, raised high enough for all to see. Upon it waited the Dominion overseer, his carapace gilded, his mandibles gleaming like daggers. He spread his limbs wide, voice booming through amplifiers. These humans have shamed us. Their antics mocked the sacred trial. Today, their insolence ends. The crowd hissed and clicked in agreement, a chittering storm. Mara let the sound wash over her without flinching. She had lived long enough to know the rhythm of mobs. How quickly they turned, how swiftly fear became fury. She leaned close to Jonas and whispered, "This is no trial. It's theater again, and every theater has its weakness." Jonas's jaw tightened. "What's our role?" Mara's grin was toothy, wicked. "Steal the show." The overseer raised a clawed hand. Guards stepped forward, dragging a contraption into view, a cage of sparking energy, humming with lethal charge. It was meant for executions, a slow vaporization of flesh and bone. The boy whimpered and buried his face against Mara's sleeve. The overseer's voice thundered, "Let the galaxy witness the futility of resistance. Humans are nothing but prey." The words ignited something deep in Mara's chest, something older than her scars, older even than her grief. She had been mocked by neighbors, dismissed by family, forgotten by her own kind. She had swallowed shame for decades. But to stand here, before thousands, and hear her species reduced to prey, that she could not abide. She tapped her cane against the stone 3 times, sharp as gunfire. The sound cut through the overseer's speech. Heads turned. Mandibles froze mid-click. "Prey," Mara rasped, her voice carrying in the silence. "If we are prey, then may the stars save you when the hunters wake." The guards moved toward her, but she did not stop. "You thought the honey badger was a joke. You thought Florida Man was an accident. You thought duct tape was only for fixing things. But I tell you this, you will choke on your own laughter." Jonas stepped beside her, pipe in hand. "She's right." His voice was low, steady. "We may not be warriors, but we're human. That means you can't predict us." The cook barked a laugh, raising his fists. "And we don't care how ridiculous we look doing it." The boy, trembling but determined, shouted, "We're honey badgers." His small voice cracked, but the crowd heard it. A ripple of unease spread. The overseer hissed, ordering the guards to strike them down. But the mob of spectators erupted before they could. Cheers, jeers, strange alien laughter, all rising in defiance of command. The human's audacity was contagious. Other species in the crowd began to chant, voices merging into a roar. The guards hesitated. The overseer shrieked, mandibles clashing in rage, but control was slipping again. The Colosseum itself seemed to tremble with rebellion. Mara seized the moment. She lifted her cane like a banner and cried, "We will not kneel. Not today, not ever." The climax crashed upon them like a wave. The guards surged forward. Jonas swung his pipe, cracking chitin. The cook rammed a guard with his shoulder, shouting a recipe as though it were a battle hymn. The boy darted under armored legs, tripping enemies with scavenged chains. And Mara struck with her cane, each blow precise, each word a spark. For dignity, for laughter, for honey badger. The overseer lunged at her, towering, furious. He raised a claw to strike. Mara met his gaze, unflinching. "Do you know the difference between us?" she whispered, just loud enough for him to hear. "You think fear rules the world. We know ridicule does." Her cane jabbed into a vulnerable seam beneath his jaw. He shrieked, stumbled, toppled from the dais. The crowd erupted, the fragile balance shattered. Soldiers scrambled, but the mob boiled over, species long cowed by fear, now emboldened by human defiance. The arena became riot. Chains snapped, weapons were seized, voices rose in thunderous unity. The Dominion's iron grip cracked under the weight of laughter and rage. When the dust finally settled, the overseer lay dead, the guards scattered, and the Colosseum's banners torn down. Humans and aliens alike stood stunned at what had transpired. For the first time in memory, the Dominion had been defied openly and lost. Mara sat upon the dais, cane across her lap, chest heaving with exhaustion. Jonas stood beside her, bruised but unbroken. The cook wiped blood from his brow, muttering something about breakfast needing more spice. The boy clung to Mara's hand, his small chest swelling with pride. "You did it," he whispered. "No," Mara corrected gently. "We did it. Together." In the days that followed, whispers of the rebellion spread across the stars. Slaves in distant systems heard the tale and lifted their heads. Dominion officers scoured archives, searching once more for the honey badger, horrified by what they saw. And in human colonies far from Jarek 7, laughter became a weapon, stories of the old woman a spark for resistance. Back in the quarter, those who had once gossiped about Mara fell silent. Some brought gifts, bread, blankets, apologies. She accepted little. She spent her days at her window, knitting from scraps, her hands steady, her heart oddly light. Jonas often sat nearby, fixing her door hinge, carrying her baskets, speaking little but never leaving her side. It was not romance in the way of youth, but something quieter, companionship forged in dignity regained. One evening, as the stars glowed like lanterns above, the boy asked, "Grandma Mara, why do they call you Honey Badger now?" She smiled faintly, eyes distant. "Because, child, the galaxy has finally learned what I always knew. We may be small, fragile, mocked, but we do not care. And that makes us unstoppable. So remember this, reader. The world will tell you that your weakness defines you, that your scars diminish you, that your time has passed. They will laugh, dismiss, and reduce you to nothing. But hear the truth whispered in the dark of chains and echoed in the roar of rebellion. Strength is not measured in years or muscles or weapons. Strength is the refusal to kneel, the audacity to laugh in the face of doom, and the courage to rise together when all seems lost. Be the honey badger. The world will never see you coming.